Hello and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast.
And I'm your host,
Brad.
Sarah.
And on this episode, we are chatting with the authors behind Star Wars Return of the Jedi, a visual archive from Insight Editions. We were lucky enough to receive a review copy, so joining us today on the show to talk all about the book are Kelly Knox, Clayton Sandell, and St. Bende. We were so excited about this episode because this visual archive is it's
so true. Like, I have a whole bookshelf of Star Wars books, and the entire bottom shelf, which is a really big shelf, has all my reference books. I love a big reference book. I'm literally the best. And I don't think I expected how big this book was and how gorgeous and incredible it is, which I really shouldn't have underestimated the team at Insight and the authors behind this book because, of course, they're going to create a beautiful, incredible, knowledge-filled book. So it really is all of those things.
Yeah, Insights definitely takes books the extra mile. I always think of the pop-up book you got that one time.
Two of them, one from the 30th anniversary and one from the 40th anniversary. Guys, I love my pop-ups.
Hey, well, speaking of 40th anniversaries, that's the purpose of this book. It's celebrating the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. We talk about this a little bit in the interview, but I think this book is very complimentary and will be a great addition on your shelves alongside, J.W. Rinsler's making of book, Paul Duncan's archive book. This has a lot of really fun behind the scenes stuff in it, as well as just overall connections to the rest of the Star Wars saga and even outside of the saga as well. So very exciting stuff. But for our authors who are joining us, so ST is a author of children's books. She is specialized in a lot of IP publishing for Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and the Jim Henson Company. Kelly Knox, who's been on the show before, she is an author as well as an entertainment writer who has written for StarWars.com, and most recently her Star Wars Dad Jokes book has hit shelves. So Kelly's awesome. Great follow if you're looking for a good Twitter joke here and there. And Clayton is an Emmy award-winning news correspondent who's given us a lot of different glimpses behind the curtain of Star Wars. I think of the Tarkin featurette from the Rogue One days. That was a big one. And a lot of other featurettes that shine a light on human interest and fan stories. So such a pleasure to have all three of them join us today. I think this is our first time doing three people in a single interview, or, at least we haven't done this a lot. So this was a real joy to get to talk with them.
And if you haven't picked up their other work, you should do that as well. And we really hope that you enjoy this episode. I loved getting to chat with these three, and we hope to do it again in the future.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our conversation with Kelly Knox, St. Bende, and Clayton Sandell. So Return of the Jedi, we celebrated the 40th anniversary last year, and I think the movie was such a watershed moment for Star Wars. It concluded a trilogy. It was a big jumping off point for like books and video games. Shadow of the Empire is one of my favorite personally, as an offshoot of the movie. And so much of what the franchise has become today, I think, is because of this film. So because it holds a special place in everybody's heart, I'd love to start with, what are each of your experiences with The Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, and what's your relationship with the film overall? And we can start with Kelly.
So Return of the Jedi is actually the Star Wars I remember seeing in the theater for the first time. It was 1983. I was 5 or 6 years old. I don't know if it was my very first movie in the theater, but certainly my first Star Wars memory. It made an impression because back in those days, the film strip could break, and that's exactly what happened. It snapped right when the Ewoks stole the speeder. And so that moment where that happened, the audience yelled, and I don't even know if we saw the end of the movie after that, because all I remember is the yelling, basically. But that moment was kind of burned in my brain, and so that's, kind of a special thing for me for Return of the Jedi. Remembering that is always fun for me. So yeah, it's definitely got its own place in my memory.
What a cliffhanger ending.
I know. I don't know when I saw the end of it. I'm sure I loved it though.
Clayton, how about you?
Yeah, I remember seeing it. I was in third grade, I think, when it came out, and it was just this epic conclusion. And I, like a lot of people, thought that that was the last Star Wars we were ever going to get. And so I sort of, at that point, wanted to learn as much as I could about the making of these movies, and that sort of started a lifelong love of all the work that ILM has done over the years, and just wanting to understand how all of that magic was done. And there was so much of it in this movie, from the models to the creatures in Jabba's palace, all the way to the Ewoks, and the just everything about it. It became this source of so much creative design inspiration for later Star Wars. And I just loved it. But I, at the time thought, well, this is it. That's all the Star Wars we're gonna get.
That's right.
So I am a convert. I came to Star Wars as an adult, and I saw them all in one weekend in release order. So this would have been the third movie that I saw. I loved it. It had Ewoks and speeder bikes and all kinds of magical things. And a few years ago, I was at a special screening that Dennis Muren was talking at, and he was talking about how they created that speeder bike sequence. And it was an awesome precursor for getting to learn more about it in the book. But that just really stuck with me, that there were all of these people doing all of this really pioneering work at the time that is still just so cutting edge today to make this amazing sequence for us.
Speaking of that sequence and all of the things that were pioneered from the original trilogy and Return of the Jedi, what do you each feel has been Return of the Jedi's biggest influence on the franchise in its 40 years, since its release?
I know what Clayton's going to say, and I think
How much time do we have? Yeah, exactly. It's sort of this very long list of stuff that I continue to find new things that stand out to me, Jedi, of all the original three films. Of course, Star Wars kind of set the bar for the world and the ships and all of that, but and then Empire came along, and we got things that walk on four legs, and that was all great. But really, I think Jedi was where they really just hit their stride in terms of just epic, iconic designs that really stood out. And whether that's creature like Leku, that's the first time we saw that was in Jedi. And to the folding wing shuttle, which they know is my favorite thing of all time. That shows up everywhere. There's not a Star Wars story out there that doesn't have some sort of folding wing shuttle. Look at the Bad Batch, right up to 2024.
Did you write the trailblazing transport page, Clayton? I have a feeling in this book that had to have been you, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I did. And what was funny is I loved it so much that we a lot of what we did was outside existing sources, kind of pulling from a lot of different places. That's the one place where I did reach out to Doug Chang, because I had just been talking to him about something, and I said, because I was looking for a quote about the folding wing shuttle design, and I couldn't find one that I liked that quite fit. And I went to Doug and I was like, please give me a quote. And of course he wrote this amazing thing about folding wing shuttle. So yes, trailblazing transport. That's all me. I plead guilty.
I was very partial to those speeder bikes. We talk about a lot of connections that we see in Jedi to other parts of the Star Wars universe. And so that was kind of a gateway for me to get to talk about my beloved Rebels. I love Star Wars Rebels. I love them so much. And so that was a little easy sequence, because we do see those speeder bikes in so many iterations throughout all of the films and series that came afterwards. So that one little vehicle let me chat a little bit about Ezra Bridger.
I love it. Yeah.
I do too.
It's like the red strings, like that one meme. It's like, how can we connect the Star Wars to the other Star Wars?
Yes, and then talk about the Star Wars. I think one of the things that's so fun about this book is you'll figure out pretty quickly which of us liked what, because we talk about it, and it gives us the chance to, because there is so much that came from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, Kelly, do you have a thing that you pinpoint as well?
I do. Mine's a little more abstract, though, I think. And it's how Luke responds to the Emperor at the end of the film, I think really defined how we see Jedi and how a Jedi should be, where he throws away his lightsaber. He's done fighting. He's not in it for like the big flashy battle, which is something Mark Hamill talks about in the chapter, that I wrote. That, they weren't focused on making it like, the huge sword fight. They were interested way more in the emotions and the conflict between father and son, and then the decision Luke ultimately makes, where the Emperor says, "So be it, Jedi." And I do an Emperor impression, but I'm not gonna do it because that's one of my favorite.
Nice. I haven't heard that yet.
Oh no,
Well, I
I'm
think
not
you,
doing
you
it.
have to do it now. I'm just kidding.
Brad loves to do impressions on this podcast, so
The Emperor's
it
so
would
good,
fit in.
and every time he
Yeah.
says it, I say, where he says, "So be it, Jedi," like, or the way he says Jedi, like, I'm like, he defines it, like right there, the Emperor's reaction, Luke's choice. So for me, Return of the Jedi was the first time we actually saw what a Jedi was supposed to look like. Like, we got Obi-Wan in the cantina swinging the lightsaber, all that fun stuff. But I think that decision, that conversation, I felt like was defined what a Jedi would be like from the stories that would be told for the years to come.
Yeah, I think that scene became like the core mythology of Star Wars. Like, it's about love, it's about like saving people you think are beyond being saved, and family, and oh god, that scene is so good.
It's so good.
We both love a chunky reference book.
This is a chunker, yep.
Yeah, it is a big chunker. Fits the bill perfectly. But how did each of you go about splitting up the work, and what did the collaboration look like between all three of you, as well as the Insight Editions team?
Yeah, so we were assigned sections that we got to write. And within those sections, we had subheaders and a vast wealth of research material that the editors had put together for us in a drive. So we would go in and comb through each book or article or interview or whatever it was in this extremely extensive drive, and then plug in whatever was applicable to the sections that we had, and then send those off to our editor, who would make them shinier.
We did ask for the access code and the keys to the archives, and just let us go in there. But that email never got returned for some reason.
Man, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, "Hey, I have a reason to be here."
Right, research.
Just saying.
It's for science.
Ever see the episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon ends up in Skywalker Ranch jail? He goes and he tries to break into the ranch, and like it doesn't work out for him. And apparently, at least in The Big Bang Theory, there's a special jail because this happens all the time. And so he goes to the jail, and it was it's really cute. That could have been us.
Yeah, we'd still be there.
You know what? I think that is a very silly, delightful idea, considering there are a bunch of us like behind the scenes nerds who, it happens.
It would be a really fun jail. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It would make it fun.
If you're going to be in jail anywhere.
Yeah. Who among us wouldn't risk Skywalker Ranch jail? I mean, maybe they serve you Skywalker Ranch wine. I mean, that's the best kind of jail.
Who knows? Like, who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
The possibilities.
It's free wine.
To find out.
It'd be like, do you want a phone call? Do you want bail money? No, I'm good. I'm good.
I live here now.
Yeah.
I can see a Yoda puppet through the jail cell window just to be in the distance. That's good enough for me.
So much of this book's or the film's creation has been documented across other books and other resources. And you mentioned the Google Drive that you kind of received of a lot of these resources. But some of these are pretty iconic within, the Star Wars fan culture, but whether it be Paul Duncan's episode 4-6 archive, the late J.W. Rensler's iconic making of book, just to name a couple. What was it like knowing that this book would sit alongside these books and complement them? And how do you feel that the book both complements these works and sets itself apart?
You were talking earlier about the red string that connects, things from Return of the Jedi. And that's exactly what I think this whole book is about, and what sets it apart from those wonderful books that you mentioned, which we looked at, for the behind the scenes and how things were made. But for us, I think the focus was more on those red strings, those connections. And I think that's what sets it apart. We like to joke that we were the person in the Leo DiCaprio pointing meme, who you watch Star Wars with, and they point at the screen, and then you go, "Oh, this was in Jedi." Well, that was kind of the job we were given And I think that's what makes this book so fun. And so it stands apart from those amazing behind the scenes books. And that's why I do think it complements it so well.
I totally agree. You know, the Rinsler, you know, J.W. Rinsler just set the bar for like behind the scenes work. So it's not, you don't have to be a behind the scenes nerd though to enjoy this book. I think it's kind of a neat hybrid. You know, it talks about it sort of talks in story uh, about Jedi, but also uh, it is somewhat some behind the scenes, but it's also like sort of taking the best of from like talking about costumes and designs and concept art and all of that sort of thing that kind of mixes it in sort of a unique package, I think, that hasn't quite been done before. Because you're right, you wouldn't want to go back and try and recreate what others have done before. So I think it sort of sits in a unique spot like that. You know, it's just there's so many great homages to Jedi in Star Wars that you're seeing, you know, every day. For whether it's, you know, we were talking about speeders and the speeder bike chase. You know, you watch The Rise of Skywalker, and there's a great sort of speeder bike chase in that movie, which I feel like takes you directly back to Jedi. And when you walk, you know, around Black Spire Outpost at Disneyland, you know, those buildings are all inspired by those shapes that Ralph McQuarrie came up with for Jabba's palace years ago. So it just has this neat. It just has such a legacy among the Star Wars films that I think is greater than any of the others.
In doing all of that research, it's a lot of amazing material, and obviously we weren't going to be able to improve on what was already done. What we tried to do was kind of put a different twist on it. So it's almost um, you get the pieces of the costumes, the pieces of the set design, the pieces of the behind the scenes, the producing elements of it, and you sort of get that nice overview in a visual compendium. I think some of the really fun things for me in here, and I know Clayton and Kelly already know this, but like I loved seeing the letter from Warwick Davis, right? Like you'll hear these stories at Celebration, and you'll hear these stories in different Enlightened Magic or in different interviews, and to actually see the pieces that they're talking about. That's just really kind of magical for me.
Yeah, that was so surreal to flip to that page and be like, oh my God. And that's one of the things I want to call out too with this book. And it's not strictly a behind the scenes book, but like I think of this book as a legacy of the film, right? Like knowing, hey, this happens in The Mandalorian, this happens in Bad Batch, or this happens in Rebels, and like seeing how all those tie back to this one film. And it's just so fascinating. But speaking of the Warwick letter and the inserts in this book, I think that's one of the things that sets it apart the most. That's one of my favorites. I also love the Rebel Trooper Polaroids from the Endor shoe. I flipped to that page. I was like, oh, I kind of want to put these on my fridge. Like, these are really cute. Of course, one of them, too, is who we now know to be Rex on Endor, which is great. It's like a piece of Star Wars history that you can't see anywhere else. Yeah. Did you all know like the full extent of what those inserts would be? Or were you as surprised as the rest of us when this got into your hands?
It was a surprise for us.
We knew some of, I knew that some of the gatefolds, like the big spreads of, because those were one or two of those were in my sections. But yeah, like they just said, that was the rest of them were a huge surprise when we got the physical editions of the book.
Yep.
I love that. It's like you wrote all this, you put it in the book, you send it off to them, and they send you the book, and you're like, and it's even cooler because it's got little foldouts and things you can grab out of it. And it makes it really fun to flip through as well, because it makes the history feel so tangible. And I think that is something that's so awesome about Star Wars, is that fans are still talking about, all of this, both the films themselves and the behind the scenes history. You can go see some of these, pioneering things, like right now at the Academy Museum, you can see the Dice Reflex, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not always so tangible, the behind the scenes film history to everybody. And I like how this book makes it just a little bit more tangible for every viewer.
Yeah, one example is the that we've got some blueprints overlays in this book, and there's an entire blueprints book that's a huge J.W. Rinsler tome that if you're a casual fan, you're probably not going to buy that $200 book, but we've taken like bits and pieces of it, and I love that stuff because I'm nerdy enough that I have taken that blueprints book and sat down on the couch to watch Empire Strikes Back, and I'll actually go through the blueprints and I'll be like, oh, that's the corridor that they walked through in the Hoth base, and that's where the command center was, and all this kind of stuff. So it's like that sort of thing is exactly what I get into, and being able to sort of pull from those sources like that and put a little bit of it in this book, I think is something that fans will kind of dig. I did anyway.
Well, and that's
That
actually
sounds like the greatest activity ever, by the way. I'm definitely going to do that because I have that book.
So my wife just shakes her head. She's like, "What are you doing?" Like, but it's yeah.
I'm working. It's my job.
Billable hours. Yes.
It's actually one of my favorite things from the opening of Galaxy's Edge is they had a T-shirt that had the blueprint of it must have been like Oga's Cantina or something, and it's got that domed roof that's so iconically Star Wars, and I wear that shirt all the time, and I feel like, oh, this is so cool.
I love that.
I'm also thinking of that red Millennium Falcon blueprint shirt that I feel like everybody has, like every single person ever.
I have the blue AT-AT one.
I have that one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Kelly, speaking of the inserts, did you have any favorite inserts in this book? I know we've mentioned the Warwick one, the matte painting and blueprints, the Endor photos. Anything else that sticks out to you?
I do like was it the Creature Shop sticker that's in there? Although Lord knows I will never pull that out of this book because of use. But maybe one day if I ever get the courage.
Keep it in the case.
But yeah, I know. But the Warwick's letter is probably my favorite though.
I think what's so sweet about that is like the very neat cursive penmanship that is no longer taught in schools and the very polite phrasing. And I hope you will remember me, sir. You're just
it's so pleasant.
I love how he put like Ewoks and like a quotation. It was like Ewoks and Jabba the Hutt. And I was like, God, he's so proper.
So if anyone is listening and doesn't know about this letter, this is the letter Warwick Davis wrote to George after the film came out when the toys were going to be releasing. And he was very respectfully asking George Lucas to please send him some of the toys, especially if there was an Ewok. He would really like that. Thank you.
Very legendary. Very legendary. No notes. I've heard the story, but seeing the letter was so delightful and really added to like how wonderful and great that we have Warwick in the Star Wars, franchise is and to this day. So yeah. There is kind of going back into the back of the book. There's like a really lengthy, amazing bibliography, which is, a testament to how much writing and history there is on Jedi out there. During your research, was there anything that surprised you or sparked your curiosity or that you really didn't know before this project at all?
I have a really obscure one. It was in researching and writing about the helmets that the Y-wing pilots wore. There was a sticker, and you can actually see it in the movie. There was a sticker that someone stuck onto one or two of the helmets that was a sticker for a small independent radio station that they listened to apparently when they were working in the shop in San Rafael, Radio Free Bolinas. It's a red sticker with RFB in it, and I know, and it's so fleeting. You would have to really look for it to know that it's there. But it was just happened to be something that one of the prop builders in the shop just loved this radio station. Apparently, was on all the time when they were listening to it, and they just stuck that sticker on the Y-wing helmet, and it's still there to this day.
I remember reading one of the sections about location scouting. And I guess when they were looking for different sites for Endor, they were hiking through all of these redwoods and these jungly places. And the producer would be whistling Indiana Jones because that was topical at the time for them.
I got to go through a lot of old Bantha Tracks newsletters, which is the Lucasfilm Club fan club, I guess they used to send it out, and they had the ILM guys basically write out their entire process. I don't even know if the movie was out yet, and you pretty much just got this firsthand account of how Joe Johnston made this, or the gentleman who Steve Grawley, I think his name was, who made the Death Star tunnels, his process for that, and so there were so many little details that came straight from them that I really loved to go through. And then my favorite was the story of Nine Numb and how he, first of all, that he was an intern, an exchange student from Kenya who was working with Ben Burt, and Ben Burt had him record his voice for Nine Numb in his own dialect. And then when The Force Awakens came along, and this was the rabbit hole I went down, there was a series on StarWars.com at the time. It's not there anymore, where the sound team on Force Awakens tried to find him because J.J. Abrams wanted the original voice back. And it was a process. Ben Burt had no idea. He tried to tell a story, the sound designer, of how they found him, but they did eventually find him and brought him back for The Force Awakens, so it's his original voice. So finding
Amazing.
it's great. That's, if you find the Nine Numb spread, it's on there how they tracked him down and everything. And it's just like, what those stories of the people that worked on it and how hard they worked to bring him in particular back, like those were such fun rabbit holes to go down.
There's just so many amazing things in this book that you just wouldn't know. And again, like everything that's come before about the history of this movie and this adding so much more even. Incredible job on this. Our final question on the book is, when fans get this into their hands, it's been out for, a month or so. So many already have this on their bookshelves, rightfully so. But what are some things that people should be paying attention to, or what do you hope that people will be on the lookout for once they open up these pages? Is there anything in particular that you say, hey, go right to this, or be on the lookout for that small detail in there? Anything that you feel like is maybe signature to this?
Kelly's section has one of my favorite stories about the throne. I don't know. I think Kelly should tell that story, but that is the thing I would hope people would find in this book. Kelly.
Yeah, that's probably my other favorite thing that I found was it's a story Ian McDermott is told at Celebration. So if you look at the throne room section, he talks about how the throne was originally motorized, but it was very loud. And so they tried it one more take with Ian moving his little feet under the rope. So if you actually watch Return of the Jedi now, it worked better than the motor, so they kept it in. He's tippy tapping his little feet under his robe to make his throne rotate. So that's, when he makes that first big impression, that's what he's doing for that part. So yep, there's that. There's what else? My hope, and saying, next time you watch it, you're gonna see that. My hope that people get from this book is the old saying that you'll never watch this movie the same way again. And that's really what I hope people actually do when they read this is, they might try and look for his little tippy tappy toes, or they might look for listen to Nine Numb next time they hear his scene. And I hope you kind of use this book to watch the movie a little differently the next time.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like you mentioned the Leo, pointing at the screen. I hope that the next time you watch it, you're pointing at the screen at all of those things. And it doesn't have to be even watching Jedi. Like one of the inserts in here is a great Ralph McQuarrie painting that was originally part of the story when they had 2 Death Stars in the original story. And though it didn't make it into the final film, obviously, this here, Bad Batch fans recognize that from, episode 3 or 4 of this season. I forget what it is, where they had these orbiting sort of space stations that were exactly that shape. So, that and knowing that, one of the things that that I think is always fun is like this whales, Purrgil, the space whales, like those seem like, I think to some casual fans that saw them, like where did that come from? Well, it goes all the way back to Jedi, even Empire. Like this was an idea that was a George idea. So you will learn that and other fascinating factoids if you read the book, and I think it'll just give you a much greater appreciation for almost every other Star Wars story that has come since.
Well, and at the end of the day, Star Wars is so much about found family too. And I think you really get that sense of not just the family on screen, but the family that created, whether through ILM or the actors or the Ewoks who were pranking the Jedi. Like all of these people came together and really created a found family in the real world as they were creating one on screen for us. And that's pretty magical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. And before we let you go off to your many other responsibilities and things in life, and so that all our listeners can, if they haven't already, go pick up the book, where can our listeners find each of you online? And is there any work that you want to mention that is coming up that you can talk about? Clayton?
You can catch me on Scripps News most evenings. Doing various stories, sometimes Star Wars, and yeah, there's some Star Wars related stuff coming up. We might have another visual guide coming out for another film about next year, maybe this time, roughly. So keep an eye out for that.
I am over, my website is stbende.com, stbende.com. I have some fun Star Wars things coming up, some Marvel, some Pixar, some princesses, and the Star Wars Bestiary is going to be coming out this fall. So hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that soon.
You can find me on Twitter at Kelly_Knox. Recently had Star Wars Dad Jokes come out same time as this book. In the fall, I'm part of the team that's doing the updated Star Wars Encyclopedia, and you can always find me on StarWars.com.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank each of you again for your time. We appreciate it. And hopefully it's not the last time we have you here to talk about a visual dictionary or visual archive of some sort.
Absolutely.
So. But until next time, may the Force be with each of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for inviting us. Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. And again, a huge thank you to Clayton, Kelly, and ST for joining us on the podcast. If you want to hear more from Friends of the Force, you can find us on all of our socials, as well as any podcast platform of your choice. So make sure you subscribe to the show for all of our future episodes. And as a reminder, we do have a Patreon where tiers start at just $1 a month. So a huge, huge, huge shout out to all of our patrons who make this show happen. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.